Scott just made the point.
GOP used to be a lot more secure, not just.
Democrats, the party of power to the people, the party that fights to stop the influence of special interest campaign money. These Democrats are running a highly centralized, closely held, Obama-cronied, well-funded operation to win the midterm elections on November 4th. I'm PJTV's Scott Ott, joined now by Stephen Green and Bill Whittle. And men, the New York Times reports that a handful of left-wing super PACs share board members, share voter data, share fundraising lists, share campaign ads, and even share office space. The Times story reports that the more collaborative Democratic approach, several party strategists said, has helped shrink the traditional advantage that conservative outside groups have enjoyed in advertising spending. Well, Stephen Green, liberal outside groups have spent some $77 million in the 2014 cycle, and right-leaning groups have spent about $113 million. But a lot of Republican group money got spent in the primaries. Don't you wish the GOP were more like the Democratic money machine?
Well, you know, I don't know that it can be. It doesn't surprise me at all that the party that eventually wants to subsume everything to the centralized authority of Washington subsumes everything to winning elections. That just kind of goes hand in gloves there. But on the other side, on the GOP side, I think primary spending can be a healthy sign of real debate within a party, within any party. The trick is, what happens after the primary is over? Do the various factions unite behind the candidate that a majority of the primary voters pick, or, as in the case of the GOP in recent years, does the real battle begin after the primary is over? You look at what's been going on in Kansas, where the GOP establishment really pulled one over on the grassroots, on the Tea Party, or you look at Mississippi, where the Tea Party really tried to pull one over on the GOP establishment, and you just have this incredible civil war where the end of the primary is the real beginning of the intra-party battle, which is exactly the opposite of what it's supposed to be.
Well, the New York Times for this article talked to a guy who runs a GOP media buying firm. Mr. Feltus described the Republican approach as a free market of messaging and organization in which the best and most effective groups would ultimately win. And this is a quote, "In the marketplace of political ideas, the Republicans should have the advantage because we have more players who can try different things," Mr. Feltus said. Now, Bill, isn't he just whistling past the graveyard? I mean, how can a scattered, chaotic approach compete with a muscular, top-down, left-wing lockstep strategy?
Yes, how can a free economy of 320 million people, each making their own decisions with their own money and local time, possibly provide better results than a command economy that's run by 3 or 4 of the smartest people ever to graduate Harvard Law School? How can such a thing ever compete? Look, I think Mr. Feltus is onto something. Now, with that said, of course, we have to understand that, as we know, the slogan, in fact, the mantra, in fact, the goal of the Republican Party is ready, fire, aim. But with that said, I think you can actually make a pretty good case for what Mr. Feltus is saying here. We don't have a lockstep thing. You know, our message is actually a lot simpler than theirs, and I just wish people could articulate it. The problem that the Democrats have, of course, is that they can't send one message out to the American people because they don't believe in the American people, don't see the American people as the American people. They have to tailor a specific message for the war on women. They have to tailor a specific message for how homophobic the country is. There's a special message for how racist the country is. There's a special message for how anti-Mexican the country is. And all these things require money and different groups and different things working together. So, you know, I think that aspect of it is a big part of it. But look, efficiency is important. And the only thing I will say is my understanding was during the last election, to give you an idea of just how much better at this the Democrats are, that on Facebook, the Republicans, people who'd signed up as Republicans, got a message on Facebook on Election Day saying, "It's Election Day, don't forget to go vote." And apparently the Democrats got messages all day saying, "Do you know your friend Jim Johnson, who lives just 2.5 blocks from you now? I feel like I'm getting darker. I'm fading. My image is receding into the midst of time." Jim Johnson has not voted yet. Did you know that your 2 friends who are on your friends list haven't voted yet? There's still 2.5 hours before the polls close. So, you know, when you're dealing with that kind of effectiveness, that actually does get you some points.
Well, in part two of this three-part trifecta, we'll take a look at the specific messaging going into these midterm elections. And then in the members-only part three, we'll take a look at your motivation to actually show up to vote. You know, free market mechanisms do work in politics, as they do in commerce, so long as they're built on voluntary, arm's-length transactions. Having run for local office, I can tell you that most of those transactions, clean campaign contributions, come from individual voters, but often from interest groups, if the candidate doesn't shift his views to suit the group. But when politicians and parties are the donors, the electoral market gets skewed by the incumbent protection racket. Politicians, their committees, parties, and PACs give to candidates to protect themselves. I once sat in a room with a cluster of local public servants who offered to raise $50,000 for my campaign if I would promise not to oppose any of them in future primaries. I walked away. The left-wing super PACs are the Democratic Party, and the Democratic Party is just the lengthened shadow of one man, Barack Obama. But no amount of money or centralized strategy can overcome the power of a voter who lives what he believes and votes accordingly. For Bill Whittle, Stephen Green, and the entire Trifecta crew at PJTV.com, I'm Scott Ott.